Chapter 12. The Second Wind of Changes. 21301 OINFO 116IR 337LI. You want to know why I kept this code? Because at that point in time I had one more race to run in the series of 5, and immediately after the race 3 things happened. 3 things that had a big effect on me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There were 4 hard-fought races you'll need to know about that were raced in the meantime. First place prize money had been increased to $2,250, and it was getting tougher to stay up there with the leaders, I can tell you. Zippy, Chip and Sergio, the Italian, the replacement riders, were 3 of the fastest riders I'd ever scorched concrete against, and 3 of the dirtiest. They were quick, and the Furuki 850 bikes, which all the Rashes, except me of course, were racing on, flew like rockets. So things hadn't looked so good. Add to this the sorry news that I'd lost my bike advantage and things looked even worse. A few too many run-ins with the cops had left me desperately short of cash, and I was in severe danger of having my ride my winnings gamble backfire on me. I was forced to ride a Kamikaze 750. Yes, the very same bike that I'd been out cornering and wiping the floor with the last 5 races or so. I was disgusted with myself. But that wasn't to say I was losing my touch completely. I won at both Grass Valley and the Pacific Coast. It was that sea air. I guess it just agreed with me. Oh, and finished a highly respectable second at Sierra Nevada. At the Redwood Forest, I managed a not so highly respectable, but still quite impressive third. Okay, so I was doing all right. I had $9,250 money in the bank, totaling a credit worthiness of $13,250, and there was still one more race in the series. But I couldn't help wondering if my slight slip in form, I had to admit it, to myself at least, I wondered, was that down to myself? There were any number of other factors I could blame, like the tougher courses, the new riders, and my second-rate bike. But I changed too. I was hitting out more and more at the other riders, at the merest provocation. All it took was someone to cut me up slightly, or force his way ahead around a bend while racing neck and neck, and I'd resort to violence. And I think it was slowing me down. Maybe I'd done better when I was concentrated on overtaking rather than knocking my opponents into next week. Maybe it was just that I was getting frustrated. Maybe the constant presence of cows and deer on the roads was too much. Certainly it meant that all too often we all had to stray out of the relative safety of the right-hand lane. We must have really been chewing the roads up too, because seemingly around every bend we'd find roadwork banners. As we sped past the speed signs, at getting on for 3 times faster than the 55-mile-per-hour limit, we got an idea of what the signs were there for. These roads were dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't losing my nerve. But previously, if you came off, there was no one else to blame except your own sweet self. Now, these obstacles required us to dig deep within our bodies, already tense to the point of bursting, and find quicker and quicker reflexes. I took to riding down the white lines in the middle of the road. Okay, so it meant you had to take your chance of oncoming traffic, but in the event of meeting a cow head-on, and they always stubbornly refused to move, it meant that you had 2 ways to run. Multiple pile-ups were becoming more and more common. People tended to go down in pairs these days. Okay, so it was a nice supportive gesture, but a pain in the butt when two 450-pound lumps of steel, complete with two low-flying riders, came cartwheeling at 150 miles per hour inches past your head. My kamikaze owning period yielded one useful outcome, though. I was definitely getting fitter. A bike, even without a rider, tends to travel an awful long way under its own steam from where you left it. If you happen to park it at 120 miles per hour, that is. At 160 miles per hour, they go even further. What I'm trying to say is that crashing my kamikaze was taking up more and more of my time. The other riders had it pretty bad too. I mean, at the speeds we were travelling, if you came off your bike, you were lucky if you had less than half a mile to run to catch up with it, or go back for it, or whatever. Either way, it meant that we had to risk running along the roads. And that was practically suicide. I mean, there were maniac road users around who didn't seem to care about the safety of pedestrians at all. People disappoint me at times. The only way to avoid serious injury while playing Hunt the Motorbike was to run along the side of the road. Okay, so you lost a bit of time, but at least you didn't lose any more brain cells. After getting back on your bike, you could often get a shunt from a rider cornering up from behind. All you had to do was blatantly get in his way while accelerating, and with a bit of luck, he'd ram you. He'd slow down, you'd speed up. Elementary Newtonian momentum theory for road rashes. Guaranteed to annoy your opponents. Worked every time. So, that was the racing. Things were tougher than ever, but I was still doing okay. With one race left to ride the season, I still figured I'd be one of the survivors. So what were those three things I mentioned earlier? Well, for starters, guess what? After that last race marking the completion of yet another series, it was announced that there were going to be yet more changes. Bigger, better, more was the catchphrase used by the organisation. Of course, what this translated to in rider speak was harder, longer, faster, and of course, more injuries. Second, Slater called it a day. He'd had enough. "Sorry, bud, I'm leaving you," he announced. "Now, I'm one crazy guy, but this scene's beginning to scare even me. I mean, have you seen the bikes they got lined up for us? 14 new Panda 750s were being unloaded from a truck. He tried to talk me into going with him. He promised sun, sea and surf, the likes of which I'd never seen before. I was tempted, but I'd already made a deal with Natasha to stick with her. Ah, yes, Natasha. Which brings me to event number 3. I just finished the last race of the season, and the announcement had been made about the changes. Once again, she'd ridden up to me and we talked. We were both scared, but both addicted to the sport. I said I'd continued if she would. She said okay. Then, you know what? She kissed me. I nearly fell off my bike. Chapter 13. The third set of changes. 21111 05VT0 1021W 47132. This was the code that marked the end of the ensuing series of 5 races. On a certain level, I'd had another great season. The Panda 850s ridden by the road rashers over the 5 races had been good bikes. In fact, they were very good. Almost the best that money could buy. They handled like a dream. Scorched along the tarmac as if possessed and had the coolest paint job you ever did see. I had to hand it to my rivals. They had had good bikes. Why am I being so fair-minded, honest, and matter-of-fact? Well, because mine had been even better. By the end of this series, I was the proud owner of a fuel-injected Diablo 1000. The ultimate, the creme de la creme of road bikes. Sure, there were bikes that were faster, but they hadn't been invented yet. This beauty, at 170 miles per hour, just for the record, swallowed up corners that a kiddie's tricycle would find too tight. I'd earned enough over the previous 5 races and saved enough money, while riding that confounded Kamikaze 750, to afford the Diablo's $25,000 price tag. And it was worth every penny. Natasha liked it too. I'd done quite well, but the series wasn't all good news. Losing Slater had been a real blow. Okay, so I still had Natasha, but with the smiling Slater had gone Angel and Dread as well. So they were no great loss. Angel had been no angel, and Dread was dreaded. He was boring. But their replacements were worse. Luna, Bob, and Helldog were their names. And they were free of the meanest, filthiest, most suicidal riders we'd ever seen. And the roads were a nightmare. You could hardly have walked the 125-mile course without tipping over a barrier, sliding on oil. Getting run over by a car or getting mean-eyed by a cow with a concrete constitution were other factors too. I began to get really vicious out on the course. But I proved myself the undisputed king of the rashes. I punched, kicked and backhanded and shunted my way to first place in 4 of the 5 races. A phenomenal achievement, even if I say it myself. Which I will. It was a phenomenal achievement. The only slight blemish on my copybook was a 2nd placing at the Sierra Nevada. And even then I'd crossed the finish line in mid-air. My bike left 100 yards back down the road, forming the intricate and thought-provoking centrepiece of a quite exceptional piece of modern art on the side of a house. What else had happened? Oh yeah, I'd finally got to meet O'Shea. Remember? Way back from the days of Fang and Polygon? He'd been roped in by the cops in an effort to hire a thief to catch a thief. Well, this poacher turned gamekeeper meant business, and he'd started handing out tickets as if they were supermarket flyers. With news of yet another cop coming soon, some tough dame called O'Connor, there would soon be 5 cops patrolling the roads. And that was too much trouble. For me, the team spirit of the Rashes had died. It had been destroyed, replaced by a monster. Road rashing was now pure violence, unadulterated brute violence, and I had almost had enough. Hendon had quickly gained himself a formidable reputation as the meanest rider on the course, but so far I'd managed to avoid him. Actually, I was sure that he was too wild for his own good. I figured that if you could get bogged down in a brawl with him, then it wouldn't be too difficult to distract his attention long enough to run him into an oncoming car. But I wasn't going to stick around long enough to find out. Yeah, you heard me right. I was quitting. After a grueling couple of years spent racing my heart out, I was calling it a day. As 15 new Diablo 1000 racing bikes were being unloaded, and after hearing the news that the next series of races were to be run over 15 suicidal miles, Natasha and I were going to get out while we still could. We figured on joining Slater at the coast. Was I a coward? I don't think so. What would you have done in my position? I earned a lot of money, had a lot of laughs, proved that I was the best rasher of them all, and had fallen in love with a beautiful woman. What more could a man ask for? You still have your doubts. Okay then. Put your money where your mouth is. You take on the 15-mile Series 5 races and see how you manage. My money says you don't even make it to the finish line. You've got my password, so use it. I dare you.